Peugeot's second generation 2008 is a small SUV that offers an arguably more sophisticated take on the kind of little urban crossover style design popularised by cars like Nissan's Juke. Super Mini based, it offers all the advantages of that compact runabout you were thinking of, together with the kind of added space, style and light off-road drivability you probably never expected to be able to enjoy on a small car budget. This revised version of the Mark II model gets a smarter look and a new full hybrid engine option. There's a bigger battery option for the all-electric version too. Fashion can take many forms, especially when it comes to segments in the automotive market. Here we're going to look at one of them, the Super Mini based compact SUV crossover, epitomised in this case by this improved version of Peugeot's second generation 2008. Its chosen sector is fashion-led, and here is arguably the trendiest contender of all in what has become an ever more competitive class. This Mark II model, first arrived in 2019, was Europe's best-selling B-segment SUV in 2021 and has sold 700,000 units since launch, helped by the success of the 𝗙cie𝗹𝗹liche full electric variant, which in 2022 accounted for 17.4% of sales. Now, the key changes with this updated 2008 model range include a visual overhaul, a new hybrid engine option, and the option of a larger battery for the EV version. Will it all be enough to allow this contender to retain its place as one of the more popular picks in this sector? You'll need the industry's most comprehensive review, the Car and Driving Road Test, to find out. Set off in the improved version of this second generation 2008, and you might still struggle a little to exactly pigeonhole this little Peugeot's raison d'etre. The small low-set steering wheel with its wrist flick action seems to promise sportiness. The purposeful looks and slightly higher driving position are mildly suggestive of all-wheel drive capability. And the light steering and big glass area are the kind of thing that you'd find in a small MPV. Has the French maker created from all this an endearing piece of compact family transport, or a car that still can't quite make up its mind what it wants to be? We remain unsure, but continue to think a lot of people will probably like it. This is why. First off, because the slightly higher, more commanding driving position and mildly SUV style feel that are on offer here have been achieved without too many obvious changes to the nippy, well-balanced front-driven handling of the 208 Super Mini, from which this car is largely derived. Body control is much better than we remember it being in the pre-2020 era Mark I 2008 model, and that car certainly couldn't replicate this one's eagerness to hug the road surface and turn accurately into sharper corners at speed. But by and large, you don't choose any sort of SUV with priorities to drive the thing on its door handles. So we were keen to see how this 2008 would cope with the more pressing priority of dealing with the day-to-day dramas of a crossover's usual suburban habitat. Peugeot's usually pretty good at delivering the kind of fluid ride quality you need in this kind of environment, and as long as you don't hobble the suspension with the optional top-size 18-inch wheels, that's pretty much what you get. We mentioned the small steering wheel. That's an integral part of something that'll grab your attention as soon as you set off in this car, the unusual iCockpit dash setup that Peugeot has been challenging convention with for some time now. This requires the curious need to view the instrument dials above the wheel rim rather than through the wheel spokes. Once you've adapted to this, more adjustment is needed if you've stretched to a top-spec GT model like this one, fitted with a 3D version of the 10-inch iCockpit instrument cluster that's fitted from mid-level trim upwards, which is meant to improve your reaction times, but initially will probably have the opposite effect. At this point, we should reference the fact that Peugeot hasn't made any fundamental engineering or handling changes to this second generation 2008 design as part of this midterm update, but it has at last dumped diesel and widened the range of powertrain options for those seeking electrification in this model. There's now a hybrid and a longer range version of the EV, both of which we'll get to in a moment, after covering the conventional PureTech 1.2 litre 3-cylinder turbo petrol unit you're still more likely to want, which is why we're trying it here. It doesn't quite have the characterful thrum of rival similar power plants like the EcoBoost unit in a Ford Puma, for instance, though it'll still fizz happily up to the red line if you find yourself running late and need to gun it a bit. Yes, even in base 100 horsepower form, where the engine offers up a lovely warble as it goes about its business and gives a decent shove from low revs. In the PureTech 100 base model, a drive mode button on the center console promises more than it delivers, just normal and eco settings, the latter being a mode that you'll need to stay away from if you want to get anywhere close to the quoted performance stats for this power plant: 62 miles an hour in 10.8 seconds on the way to 114 miles an hour. The PureTech 100 unit comes only with 6-speed manual transmission, but if you pay the extra for the PureTech 130 version of this engine, you'll be offered the option of EAT8 8-speed auto transmission. That's what we're trying here, which comes with steering wheel paddles and an extra sport drive mode. This improves those performance stats to 9.2 seconds at 126 miles an hour, the sprint stat half a second quicker than the PureTech 130 manual model. Choose your 2008 with the hybrid 136e 𝗙cie𝗹𝗹liche version of this engine that we mentioned earlier, and as usual with a full hybrid, you have to have an automatic gearbox, though this is a rather different kind of self-shifting transmission, and not only because it's of the dual clutch sort and restricted to 6 speeds. Built into its casing is a DC inverter, an engine control unit, and most significantly, a little 28 horsepower electric motor powered by a tiny battery secreted beneath the front passenger seat. On the move, this motor can work together with the hybrid model's 1.2 litre petrol engine or separately from it. And unlike with a mild hybrid system like that fitted to, say, a rival Ford Puma, here the car can be driven for short urban distances under 18 miles an hour on electric power alone. During deceleration, the petrol engine stops and the e-motor acts as a generator to recharge the hybrid system's 48-volt battery. The battery also stores the energy recuperated by the regenerative braking system. The motor additionally assists the engine under acceleration, such as from standstill to 62 miles an hour, which takes 8.3 seconds en route to 128 miles an hour for the 136 PS version of this engine. The more affordable 100 PS version of this hybrid unit that Peugeot offers in the 208 Super Mini isn't available in this SUV. Right, that's covered off the combustion engine powertrain options. Now let's get on to what's on offer from the E2008 model's fully battery-powered setup, which, as before, is shared with this model's close Stellantis group cousins, the Vauxhall Mokka Electric and the DS3 E-Tense. Now, we've covered this E2008 variant in a separate test where we told you that in the revised model most E2008s continue using the same drivetrain as before, with a 136 horsepower electric motor driving the front wheels through a single speed transmission and energized by a 50 kilowatt hour battery with a claimed 214 mile range. If you can stretch to the very top of the lineup though, Peugeot will now also offer you a longer range variant with a gutsier 156 horsepower motor mated to a larger 54 kilowatt hour battery that claims to be able to take you up to 251 miles between charges. That's still some way short though of the range that you get in the slightly larger Kia Niro EV or Hyundai Kona electric models that would cost much the same. As usual with an electric vehicle, all of the available torque is pretty much developed at once. There's 260 Newton meters of it, and this car simply hurls itself away from rest. It takes just a couple of seconds to crest the 30 miles an hour mark, and 62 miles an hour is reached in 9.8 seconds, or 9.1 seconds in the longer range version. disguising the fact that, also like all EVs, this zero emissions variant has a bit of a weight problem. That drivetrain adds over 300 kilograms of bulk. Of course, you certainly won't achieve anything like the quoted level of operating capability if you get anywhere near this EV's quoted 93 mile an hour top speed, or if you habitually drive your 𝗙2008 in the sport setting that'll be necessary to release the full 136 or 156 horsepower power outputs we mentioned earlier. The quoted range figures will only be distantly possible if you instead engage a somewhat restrictive eco mode that drops power output right down to 83 brake horsepower. That's the setting you'll use in an 𝗙2008 around town, an environment in which it makes a strange polyphonic sound at low speeds to warn unwary pedestrians of its impending approach. Above 18 miles an hour, all you can hear is a bit of tyre roar from the eco-moulded Michelin rubber. Our focus today, though, is on the combustion-powered 2008 models, and a useful incentive to choose one of them lies with the optional availability of the advanced grip control system that we're trying here, which is well worth considering. By braking a wildly spinning front wheel, this setup works with the standard ESP stability control program to transfer torque to the tyre with most traction, and this, along with standard mud and snow tyres, is enough to enable negotiation of some surprisingly sticky situations. True, because this 2008 has relatively little ground clearance, rated at 160 millimeters for this Mark II model, which is even less than the old Mark I version, advanced grip control won't ultimately enable this car to go any further than its compact crossover counterparts off-road. But it'll certainly give you a useful advantage in slippery car parks or on country lanes during the next snowy snap. Control of the setup is provided by extra snow, mud or sand drive modes. Ultimately though, a typical 2008 customer won't be someone wanting to push tractional boundaries or revel in the improved drive dynamics of this Mark II model. Their perception of driving enjoyment will more likely lie with a lowering rather than a raising of the heartbeat. The sort of thing that will appeal if you're the kind of person who wants to have as little input into the road-going experience as possible. Now, should that be the case, you'll really like the impressive refinement evident even in combustion engine versions of this Peugeot, which will make you feel more comfortable about the prospect of potentially attempting a long highway trip in one. And for that kind of journey, you might also possibly be interested in the limited level 2 style driving autonomy that is possible to build into plusher versions of this car. With this, a combination of adaptive cruise control and a lane positioning assist system mean that on a long highway trip, virtually all the steering, braking and throttle work would be done for you. It's just another example of the way that the design of compact crossovers has moved forward, from a small SUV packaged in a way proving that beyond doubt. This second generation 2008 visually delivered what its Mark I predecessor lacked, a real sense of stylistic identity. Original designer 𝗙cie𝗹𝗹liche evolved the shape of this second generation 208 Super Mini into that of a bold, robust and confident SUV. If you want this car, it'll be because you think it really stands out, and you'll be right. This improved version gets a few subtle visual tweaks and still has just as much pavement presence. Not many of those are visible from here at the side, though the wheels have been redesigned, varying in size from 16 to 18 inches. We've got 17-inch Caracoid diamond cut rims here. Now, as before, there's plenty in this muscular profile to catch the eye, with a high belt line, various repeating triangular lines and lots of intricate surfacing that must have made the panel pressing a real technical feat. This striated C-pillar panel's an interesting touch. The black and grey lower side panels are neat, and this GT front wing badge defines the top version with its contrast coloured roof. The main changes with this updated design are all here at the front, which above base trim gains this smart body-coloured cascading style grille, this restyled grey lower intake, and perhaps most notably these overt corner cutouts with their 3 daytime running light slashes. In short, you'll be noticed in the gym car park. The LED headlights have been revised too, and on this top GT version are of the full LED sort made up of 3 light modules. Now, across the range, the badge works different as well. That grille now featuring Peugeot's latest Shield logo, with a newly slanted 2008 badge just above. At the rear, the avant-garde theme continues with exact design and tautly drawn shaping. The tail lights are now of the LED sort right across the range, but lose the slashed design that looked quite smart with the original. The revised bumpers, an improvement though, more neatly incorporating these corner reflectors and including these smart silvered exhaust outlets on this GT model. Finishing touches are provided by this subtle roof spoiler with a shark fin aerial just beyond. Now, of more importance, of course, is what you can't see, the sophisticated CMP chassis that this car shares with its Vauxhall Mocha and DS3 Stellantis Group cousins, an architecture which allows both combustion and EV variants to be built on the same platform. It's also notably light. An entry-level version of this 2008 tips the scales at well under 1.2 tonnes, which to give you some segment perspective, makes it around 100 kilograms lighter than, say, a rival Ford Puma. Right, time to take a look inside. Now, too often with futuristic-looking cars, you find the designers have run out of ideas or budget by the time it comes to the interior. Is that the case here? No. In fact, this cabin is still in many ways the most innovative part of the car, reminding you just how stuck in a rut most other small SUVs are in terms of design. In this revised model, it's been improved with plusher fabrics, a standardised 10-inch centre screen and smarter graphics for the 10-inch instrument display that sits alongside it on most models, which as before gets clever 3D tech in this top GT version. As previously, the whole design is based around Peugeot's now familiar iCockpit format, where you view the instrument binnacle over the upper rim of a tiny steering wheel rather than conventionally through the wheel spokes. In their second generation 2008, Peugeot further developed that approach with this 2-tier fascia layout with its smart carbon-style concave inner section that curls around the edge of the cabin and on into the doors. It's all pretty much identical to what you get in a 208 Super Mini, though here you sit a fraction higher, not always a given in the design of small SUVs these days. The key thing your attention will be drawn towards immediately is the instrument binnacle display, which varies quite a lot with trim choice. There's nothing like this in the base active version, where more conventional dials are separated by a 3.5-inch middle readout. At mid-level in the range, you get a proper digital set of dials on a 10-inch instrument screen. And with this top GT version, as just mentioned, there's this eye-catching 3D version of that 10-inch display, apparently derived from the futuristic setup first seen on the brand's Quartz concept car of 2014. This is critical information like speed projected in hologram form from the inner roof of the binnacle onto a piece of slanted perspex in the foreground. Now, a button on the left of the steering wheel gives you 6 ways to format this setup, all of which feature fuel and temperature readouts that respectively display at the left and right hand extremities of the display and feature on a screen sat further back. Basically, the different modes change what's projected into the middle. Minimum gives you a digital speedo. Dials add to that flanking analog style virtual speedo and rev counter gauges. The driving setting prioritizes a safety graphic. Navigation prioritises a nav map. Then there are personal 1 and personal 2 settings, which add into the centre section either trip computer data or a circular rev counter. Now, whatever setting you select, it's all very aircraft cockpit-like, and Peugeot says that the way the data is displayed slightly closer to your eye line can improve reaction time by up to half a second at motorway speeds. Others mutter about form over function, as they always do with trendy new cabin technology. Peugeot's brand stablemate Citroën used to favour futuristic cabin features like this, then spoil it all with weird dash design and questionable quality, a mistake that Peugeot's successfully avoided making here. In fact, if you like a sophisticated feel, you might well find this to be the most attractive interior offered by any current compact crossover. Certainly, perceived quality is at the upper end of the kind of thing you'll find in this class, though much of that relies on acres of shiny piano black plastic that will quickly scratch and smear unless you're extremely careful. As is now usual in any modern car, the centre of the fascia is dominated by an infotainment touchscreen, which is now 10 inches in size right across the range, though it only comes with these high-definition graphics if you avoid base trim. The display resolution and response still isn't quite as good as you'll find with Volkswagen Group products, nor is the menu structure as clear and easy to use. But it politely wishes you good morning and good evening, and we like the way that it's subtly angled towards the driver and has a neatly extended part to the lower frame that you can rest your finger on between screen jabs. Plus, as you'd expect, most of the important incorporated elements are present and correct, like a decent DAB audio system and Bluetooth. Now you swipe left to get an application drawer, which includes games like tic-tac-toe and hangman. Swiping further left gives you the connected navigation system that we've got here. Now this used to be a standard part of this monitor on most 2008 models, but disappointingly, given the price increase here, Peugeot's now made that optional, reasoning that most owners will use navigational apps via this monitor's built-in Apple CarPlay Android Auto mirroring system, which is now of the wireless sort. In using this monitor, you might not initially realise that most of the controls for it are further down the centre stack, under these central vents, primarily the touch-sensitive buttons behind these 7 stylised piano keys. Those keys claim to be able to operate many of the climate functions, but if you want to change the temperature or the fan speed, you still have to do that on the monitor above, which is inconvenient because it generally means switching away from whatever it was that you were looking at, and it means looking away from the road. Those touch-sensitive buttons usually require you to do that too, and they're easily tapped by mistake when you're using the front keys. Plus, they can collect condensation from the air conditioning. It's all less than ergonomically ideal. The benefit of not having physical centre stack climate controls, the sort of thing that you do get in this car's Vauxhall Mocha cousin, to be frank, isn't huge. The space these would normally occupy is used instead by a smart lidded box, the inner box lid of which has a pen recess and inside of which is the wireless phone charging mat. The provision of this compartment does at least mean that you can charge your handset out of sight of prying eyes rather than leaving it exposed in this open area ahead of the gear stick, which incorporates a 12-volt socket and which on most models has twin USB ports nearby. The designers have forgotten to add an overhead sunglasses compartment, probably because they wanted to make space for the optional panoramic cielo glass roof, which has a rather stiff manual blind. But there are decently sized door bins with angled bottle holders. You get a small open cubby by the driver's right knee, and there are ticket clips on the sun visors. As usual with right-hand drive versions of French cars though, the glove box is halved in size by the fuse box. It really is time that Gallic makers sorted this issue out. There are twin cup holders near the gear stick, and if you avoid the entry-level active trim level, you get this deep, narrow lidded box between the seats with a lift-out coin tray. What else? We don't think many will particularly like the oversized gear knob on the manual models, and taller drivers might find the pedals placed a little too close for comfort, though there's plenty of seat height and steering column adjustability. The seats are reasonably comfortable and attractively stitched, particularly on this GT version, but it's disappointing that you can't add lumbar support into them unless pricey suede upholstery is optionally specified. Build quality from the Slovakian factory is fine, but this cabin can't quite replicate the sheer solidity of a Volkswagen Group product in this segment. Still, there are nice touches to compensate. The stitching on the front door cards looks classy, and the way that little speakers have been built into the A-pillars is clever. All-round visibility isn't bad, but could be better. There are decently sized door mirrors, but the thickness and angle of the windscreen pillars obscure more of what you can see each side at junctions than would be the case in, say, rival Volkswagen T-Cross. Plus, the rear C-pillar and the tapering roofline also reduce your rear three-quarter vision. Fortunately, rear parking sensors are standard across the range. You'll have to have this electronic parking brake on most variants. The manual parking brake lever we'd prefer is fitted only on base active trimmed models. All of this, as we've been saying, is much as it would be with a 208 Super Mini. But when we tested that car, it was when it came to the back seat that things began to, well, unravel a little. We've higher hopes in this regard here, though, mainly because this 2008 model is a useful 245mm longer than its small hatch showroom stablemate. In fact, at 4,304mm long, this car is actually only 238mm shorter than a mid-size 3008 SUV from the next segment up, which makes this 2008 one of the largest contenders in the class for compact crossovers. To give you some perspective, a Volkswagen T-Cross measures in at 4,127mm, a Ford Puma is 4,207mm, and a Renault Captur is 4,227mm. Predictably, it's a lot easier to get into than a 208, thanks to an extra 100mm of roof height. But entry for, say, older folks still won't be quite as easy as it is on some small SUV rivals due to these high sills and the fact that the 208's rather narrow door opening remains. Take a pew on this rear seat and you'll find that it's a lot less pokey than is the case with the 208, not only due to this SUV's extra roof height, but also because legroom is ample by class standards, helped by a 65mm wheelbase length increase over that equivalent Super Mini model. Not so good is the relative narrowness of the cabin, which would mean that a trio of adults back here would need to be on very friendly terms indeed. But then how often would you really cram 5 adults into a car of this size? It's a little disappointing to find that this bench doesn't slide fore and aft like it does in a rival Renault Captur and Volkswagen T-Cross, but that's predictable because this Peugeot's designers had to take account of the fact that in the full electric version of this model, the powertrain's battery pack would need to sit beneath this back seat. It certainly helps that the designers have done the best with what they had to work with. The curvature of the front seat backs is designed to improve knee room. There's a notably low centre transmission tunnel, and there's lots of room to poke your feet beneath these front chairs. Unfortunately though, the headrests are of the sort that uncomfortably dig into the back of your neck until raised. It seems a bit mean that coat hooks are missing from the grab handles, but you do get nicely presented stitched door cards, seat back pockets, and on most models, unusually for a car in this class, connectivity ports back here. From mid-range Allure trim upwards, there are actually 2 USB ports provided, a standard feature lacking on many luxury cars we test. Finally, let's take a look in the boot, which is 434 litres in size. That's 123 litres larger than the trunk that you'd get in a 208. This is a capacity figure that remains about average by class standards. To give you some segment perspective, a rival Nissan Juke offers 422 litres, while a Ford Puma has 456 litres. With those models though, the designers didn't have to allow for BEV all-electric technology. Peugeot feels pretty proud that there's no compromise in cargo area size if you go for the battery-powered 𝗙cie𝗹𝗹liche variant, which must have taken quite a lot of development effort. Now, there's quite a high loading lip, as you can see, which you'll especially notice if you have an entry-level active variant lacking this 𝗙cie model standard adjustable height boot floor, which can be raised and neatly kept at an angle using these neat side stays. In this combustion model, there's a bit of extra space beneath the floor too. There's enough for the sadly optional space saver spare wheel that you really ought to fit. Bag hooks have been forgotten, not sure why, but there are floor tie down points and you get a light on the right. It's quite a usable, squirrely sized space, but as usual in this class, there's no seat folding cleverness. Stuff like adjustable seat backs for awkwardly shaped loads, a ski hatch or a 40-20-40 rear bench split. You'd think designs in the compact crossover segment might be building that kind of stuff in by now. Anyway, instead, there's just a straightforward 60-40 rear bench split. Once the seats are folded, there's 1,467 litres of capacity when you load to the roof. Prices for this revised version of the second generation 2008 were pitched in the £24,000 to £40,000 bracket from launch, and as we filmed in spring 2024, which is a step up of around £3,000 over the prices being charged for the original version of this Mark II model back at launch in 2020. You might be wondering what the premium is to choose a Super Mini based SUV like this over an ordinary Super Mini. Well, let's take a look in this case. At the time of this test, Peugeot wanted a premium from you of between £2,670 and £3,620, depending on variant, if you're to choose this 2008 SUV rather than a directly equivalent version of its 208 Super Mini showroom stablemate. Ever wondered about the price of fashion? You've got it right there. And given that the 208 is one of the market's slightly pricier volume branded Super Minis, that explains why this 2008 isn't inexpensive. There's a slightly less complex range of trim options now, just base active, mid-level allure, and as in this case, top GT. Peugeot wants you to pick a powertrain in the same way that you'd select one of these trim options, whether that be conventional PureTech petrol, petrol hybrid, or 𝗙cie𝗹𝗹liche full electric. Now, you can still have manual transmission with the base unelectrified engine. In fact, you have to have it with the entry-level 1.2 PureTech 100 unit. The 𝗙cie𝗹𝗹liche 1.2 PureTech 130 engine that we're trying here can be had with the option of an EAT 8 8-speed auto for £1,600 more. There's no longer a diesel 2008 model. That's now been replaced by the auto-only hybrid 𝗙cie𝗹𝗹6 petrol powertrain that Peugeot now wants you to consider, priced, as we filmed, from around £28,000. That's a much higher pricing start point for hybrid power than is the case with the equivalent 208 Super Mini, mainly because with this 2008, Peugeot doesn't offer that hybrid setup in its more affordable 100 horsepower form. Now, if you're considering the mid-level Allure spec that many 2008 customers will want, the hybrid 136 variant needs a budget of around £30,000. Think around £800 more than you'd need for an equivalent version of the conventional PureTech 130 EAT8 Auto. That hybrid is worth considering as an alternative to the pure electric 𝗙cie𝗹𝗹eight model, which from launch in this revised form was priced from around £36,000, a sum which gets you the older 50 kWh EV drivetrain. Peugeot's newer 54 kilowatt-hour longer range battery for the 𝗙cie𝗹𝗹liche is only offered with top GT spec, where it requires an £800 premium over the 50 kilowatt-hour setup, which in turn takes the price to the kind of level that you might never have expected would be required for a small SUV of this size, around £41,000. What about rivals? Well, let's start with the two Stellantis Group models that share all of this Peugeot's engineering, the Vauxhall Mokka, which with discounts will probably cost you much the same, and the DS3, for which you'll probably need to allow, well, around £1,500 more. Now, a slightly different platform underpins another similarly engined Stellantis Group model, the Citroën C3 Aircross. But that car could save you up to £5,500 to £6,000. The gap might shrink a little if you equalised equipment, but a big price gap would still remain. From outside Stellantis, you might be considering a Ford Puma, which costs much the same, or the Volkswagen Group small SUV design badged as either the Volkswagen T-Cross or the 𝗙će𝗹𝗹𝟐, which costs about the same as a 2008 too, though you could save £1,500 or so if you get it as a Seat Arona. Or you might want Nissan-Renault Alliance engineering in the form of either a Nissan Juke or a Renault Captur, both of which could save you around £2,500 over a 2008. Think in terms of a saving of around £3,000 over this Peugeot if you're considering a Korean alternative, the Kia Stonic or the Hyundai Bayon, and around £4,000 if you're looking at a Suzuki Vitara or KGM Tivoli. The saving over this Peugeot would be around £5,000 if you're looking at a Dacia Duster, and around £6,000 if you're looking at an MG ZS. What about if you're considering some sort of electrified 2008? If your interest is in the hybrid version, then you'll find the £28,000 asking starting price similar to a Nissan Juke hybrid and about £2,000 below a Fiat 500X. But Peugeot's hybrid asking figure is a couple of £1,000s more than a base Toyota Yaris Cross and around £3,000 more than hybrid versions of the Renault Captur or Dacia Duster. A Suzuki Vitara hybrid would save you even more, but that's woefully inefficient. As for the full electric 𝗙ie𝗹𝗹𝗐, well, that £36,000 starting figure is, as you might expect, similar to its identically engineered Stellantis Group cousins, about the same as a Vauxhall Mokka electric and around £1,000 less than a DS3 e-Tense. The budget choice in this segment is the MG ZS EV, which was priced from around £30,500 as we filmed. If, having considered all of this, you're seduced by this Gallic model style proposition and you then conclude that it is this Peugeot that you really want, then you're going to want to know just how generous the brand has been when it comes to standard spec. Well, let's see. Now, even entry-level active variants do come pretty well equipped with 16-inch silver Cylon alloy wheels, rear parking sensors, eco LED headlights, auto headlamps and wipers, power folding heated mirrors, a colour-coded rear spoiler, full LED tail lamps, a 𝗙će𝗹𝗹𝟐 Category 1 alarm and a reasonable tally of camera safety kit, which we'll get to in a moment. Inside, in an active spec variant, there's automatic air conditioning with a pollen filter, a small little leather stitch steering wheel, a trip computer and programmable cruise control with a speed limiter. Infotainment is taken care of by a 10-inch high-definition HD capacitive colour centre dash touchscreen featuring wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto smartphone mirroring. Bluetooth and a decent quality 6-speaker DAB audio system feature as well. Across the range, 2008 buyers get the benefit of the My Peugeot app package that allows you to check data on your car on your phone. Things like fuel consumption, maintenance or servicing alerts. It can also save the location of your car, remembering where you parked it. The app's homepage gives you essential data like average consumption and mileage. Plus, you can also use the app to look at previous maintenance appointments and to book service visits. The My Peugeot app additionally includes a whole range of specific services for 𝗙cie𝗹𝗹liche owners, including remote settings and public charging solutions. Anyway, that covers everything you can expect from a base active trimmed model. But the majority of 2008 customers are going to want to start their search with mid-range 𝗙ihe trim. Now, 𝗙ihe variants are recognisable by the use of body colour on the checkered front grille, gloss black finishing on the rear bumper, plus dark tinted rear side and tailgate windows, gloss black roof rails and larger 17-inch wheels of a smarter 𝗙cie𝗹𝗹𝟎 diamond cut design. At this level in the range, you also get front parking sensors, which includes a close obstacle detection system with a virtual distance indicator for low-speed manoeuvring. Inside, in a 2008 𝗙ihe variant, the key inclusion is the expansion of the iCockpit instrument screen from 3.5 to 10 inches. Plus, you'll find the cabin marked out by the addition of part faux leather upholstery with a tri-material 𝗙cie𝗹𝗹𝟎cie embossed fabric. You get quite a few more USB sockets at this level in the range, one more in the front and the addition of 2 in the back. Plus, there's an electrochrome rear view mirror, a centre front armrest with storage compartment and a modular adjustable height boot floor. Right, so that covers what you get with the 2 mainstream trim levels, active and 𝗙ihe. Quite a few prospective 2008 buyers, though, will be tempted by the sportier look of this test car's GT trim, recognisable by its diamond black roof finishing and full LED headlamps that include smart beam assist. Inside at GT level, there's green interior stitching that also features on sportier dynamic seats, upholstered in a tri-material combination of Kapi faux leather and Belomka cloth. There's also a higher quality Mistral perforated leather steering wheel through which you'll view a configurable 3D version of that 10-inch iCockpit instrument screen. Keyless entry, a colour reversing camera, a wireless phone charging plate, a frameless rear view mirror, aluminium door scuff plates and 8 colour personalisable ambient lighting also make the kit list with this GT spec. Right, enough with all the standard features fitted across the various trim levels. What about options? Well, there are actually very few, because Peugeot would like buyers wanting to embellish things a bit to simply progress another level or 2 up the trim hierarchy. There are a few key options though, and perhaps the most significant one, the advanced grip control system that we've been trying here. It's worth having because for £300 more it improves front wheel traction in slippery conditions, though for some reason it's only available if you avoid base trim. Do that and you'll also be able to add connected 3D navigation, adaptive cruise control and a 𝗙cie𝗹𝗹𝟎 opening glass roof to your 2008. Top GT spec can be upgraded with larger 18-inch 𝗙cie black alloy wheels and also with Adamite green stitched Alcantara Iconium upholstery, which includes front seat heating and a massage function and is the only way that you'll get lumbar support in a 2008. Bear in mind that like most brands these days, Peugeot penalises you on paint choice. Unless you choose to have your 2008 finished in dour selenium grey, then you'll have to pay your dealer extra for your choice of colour. We've got Elixir Red Metallic here. A tow bar is available across the range and we'd want to add the optional Space Saver spare wheel too, but you can't have that on the EV version. Finally, a specific word about the 𝗙2008 model. We find it annoying that Peugeot refuses to supply a 3-pin charging lead as standard with this EV variant, but wants instead to get you to pay nearly £500 more for it. Yes, of course, you'd ideally never want to plug into a domestic supply with such a thing, but in operating an 𝗙2008, there might be times during which you'd have to, say when you're staying at a friend's house or a B&B overnight. At such times, a 3-pin plug lead would be essential. See if you can get your dealer to throw it in as part of the deal, is our advice. It's also worth mentioning that if your property or workplace happens to have a three-phase electricity supply, then it might be worth paying the extra £300 including VAT to have your 𝗙cie𝗹𝗹liche standard 7.4 kilowatt onboard charger upgraded to 11 kilowatt spec, so that charging time can be significantly reduced from 7.5 hours to just 5. Let's finish with a look at safety. You'd expect a modern Super Mini based SUV these days to come with some sort of autonomous braking system fitted as standard across the range, and by and large this 2008 doesn't disappoint. The active safety brake automatic braking system is standard fit, and it works at speeds of between 3 and 53 miles an hour, scanning the road ahead in search of potential collision hazards. If one is detected, you'll be warned. If you don't respond or aren't able to, then at speeds below 19 miles an hour, your 2008 will autonomously brake itself to a complete stop with 0.9 G of braking, avoiding the obstacle. At speeds of between 19 and 53 miles an hour, speed will be reduced by up to 14 miles an hour. In its standard form, though, this system can only identify vehicles and only in daylight. Disappointingly, you have to avoid base trim to get active safety brake in a form where it can identify pedestrians and cyclists and work at night. Other standard safety features include lane keeping assist with road edge detection, which alerts you if you drift out of your lane and applies subtle corrective lock to steer you back to where you ought to be. Now, like the active safety brake setup, we found that this feature works smoothly and fairly unobtrusively, with a refreshing lack of too many jerks and beeps and bongs. Right, what else is standard in terms of safety camera kit? Well, there's a driver's attention warning system, which works at speeds of upwards of 40 miles an hour and monitors your driving reactions for drowsiness, which if detected will prompt a warning to stop for a restorative coffee. Plus, it'll automatically warn you to take a break if you've been driving for more than a couple of hours. There's also traffic sign recognition, which pictures speed signs as you pass, then displaying them on the dash, and can even recognise stop and no entry signs. And there's speed limit recognition, which can be set to use the traffic sign camera to keep your speed below the legal limit. Buyers also get the brand's Peugeot Connect and SOS system built into the car, which will automatically alert the emergency services with your exact GPS location in an accident. As mentioned earlier, with GT trim, you get smart beam assistance that automatically dips your headlights for you at night. More usual safety inclusions that of course feature across the range include ISOFIX child seat fastenings on the outer rear seats, a tyre pressure monitoring system, hill start assist to stop you from drifting backwards on uphill junctions, and twin front, side and curtain airbags, though unfortunately there's no driver's knee airbag. Plus, of course, all the usual electronic assistance for stability and traction control. There's cornering brake control for extra stability through the turns, and a drag torque control feature that stops destabilisation of the car that would otherwise occur if you were to suddenly lift off the throttle, or on a manual model change down at too low a gear on a slippery road. What else should we tell you? Maybe that the 5-star Euro NCAP showing of the previous generation pre-2020 era 2008 model wasn't replicated this time round. This Mark II design's 4-star showing, despite vastly improved safety standards, reflecting the fact that the NCAP test is a lot tougher these days. Presumably, the NCAP testers took a rather dim view of the active safety brake system's base trim limitations. If you want more, then provided you avoid base trim, your dealer will sell you various extra cost parking packs that include blind spot monitoring. Avoid base trim and a manual gearbox, and this 2008 model's capabilities can be further built upon with a modest level of level 2 style driving autonomy if you specify the optional Drive Assist Pack Plus package. Peugeot's approach to this is similar to the kind of thing that you'll find on top versions of the rival Renault Captur. using an adaptive cruise control system with an integrated stop and go function, which, if you come across a tailback, will automatically slow you down to a stop and start you off again when the traffic moves. This setup works in conjunction with lane positioning assist, which centres the car in the middle of the roadway lane, which means that with these two features working on a long highway trip, virtually all the steering, braking and throttle work would be done for you. Small Stellantis Group hatches of the modern era usually develop a frugal WLTP rated running cost showing, aided by efficient engine technology and relatively light weight. So it is once more here, aided in this case by the continuing use of the French conglomerate CMP small car platform, plus extra touches like a weight optimised seat design and the replacement of the old Mark I 2008 steel bonnet with an aluminium one. Obviously though, a small SUV like this will weigh more than the Super Mini it's based upon, though in this case that weight penalty isn't that great. This 2008 tips the scales at 115 kilograms more than its 208 showroom stablemate, that's in base form, which sounds like a lot but actually doesn't translate into too much of a running cost downside. Not usually anyway. A 2008 PureTech 100 manual variant returns up to 53.2 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and up to 120 grams per kilometre of CO2. The figures for the equivalent 208 are up to 58.2 miles to the gallon and up to 109 grams per kilometre. You'll get virtually the same efficiency returns from the 1.2 litre PureTech engine in 𝗙cie𝗹𝗹liche 130 horsepower form, but if you pair that unit with the E88 Auto that we've got here, the figures take a bit more of a hit, up to 48.9 miles to the gallon and up to 130 grams per kilometre. What about the 2008 hybrid? Are the efficiency improvements promised by this petrol-electric derivative large enough to justify its price premium? Well, the technology sounds quite promising, incorporating a variable geometry turbocharger, variable valve timing and a belt-driven starter that combines with the e-motor to start the petrol engine from cold and also restarts the engine quickly and seamlessly while driving. Well, the 2008 hybrid manages up to 62.1 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and up to 102 grams per kilometre of CO2, a useful improvement over the conventional engine and very close to the stats of the class-leading Toyota Yaris Cross hybrid, and virtually the same as the figures delivered by the Vauxhall Corsa hybrid Super Mini that we reviewed recently. These improved returns are enough to allow the 2008 hybrid 136e 𝗙cie𝗹𝗹𝟐 model to usefully reduce the normal version's BIK tax rating down to 27%. The ordinary PureTech models are usually rated at between 30 and 32%, depending on variant. But of course, that's nothing like as good a tax return as you get from the E2008 full electric model Peugeot really wants to sell you, which like all EVs is BIK rated at just 2%. Well, until 2025 anyway. Until that date, in an E2008, as with all EVs, you get free VED car tax and entry to the London congestion and ULEZ zones. As we told you in our driving section, the standard 50 kilowatt-hour E2008 electric takes you up to 214 miles between charges. For the pricier 54 kilowatt-hour long-range version, that figure rises up to 239 miles. If you're an E2008 owner, you'll need to know that getting anywhere near the quoted range figure will necessitate staying in the powertrain's provided Eco mode. Activating its Sport mode setting will reduce your range by about 10%. What about charging times? As an EV owner, it goes without saying that you'll need off-street parking and you'll need to get a wall box installed in your garage. With that in place, a full charge from empty will take 7.5 hours. If your property happens to have a 3-phase electricity supply and you pay extra £300 including VAT to have your E2008 standard 7.4 kilowatt onboard charger upgraded to 11 kilowatt spec, that charging time can be reduced to just 5 hours. But don't bother with the 11 kilowatt onboard charger upgrade if you haven't got a 3-phase power supply at home. With a normal electricity supply, an E2008 with that 11 kilowatt onboard charger would actually take longer to charge. Charging cost effectively will require proactive use of the charging timer so that you can tap into off-peak electricity rates. You can activate this via either the car's centre dash screen or via a special section of the My Peugeot app. The charging timer will also be useful for preconditioning the cabin of the car before you get into it. This will mean that you won't have to use valuable battery energy warming or cooling the cabin when you start off. What about charging your 𝗙cie𝗹𝗹𝟎 when you're out and about? Well, the car DC charges to 100 kilowatts, which isn't particularly fast by modern EV standards. At that rate, you'll need half an hour to charge from 15 to 80%. At a lesser 50 kilowatt DC charger, that time rises to 45 minutes. At the other extreme, if you happen to be somewhere where you can only charge from a domestic supply using an ordinary 3-pin plug and the optional 3-pin plug lead that costs extra with this car, the charging replenishment time would be a yawning 20 hours. As an 𝗙cie𝗹𝗹𝟎 buyer, your dealer will also give you the option to pay a subscription for a so-called mobility pass. That'll enable you to borrow a conventional petrol or diesel-powered car from the brand for those times when you might need to undertake a longer or more complex journey. Holiday times, for instance. What else might you need to know? Well, we'll switch back to the combustion engine 2008 models and tell you that there's the usual stop-start system that cuts the engine when you don't need it, stuck in traffic or waiting at the lights. As a 2008 owner, you can download that useful My Peugeot app we mentioned earlier, via which you can take care of your car online and book maintenance visits, which, by the way, will be needed every year or 12,500 miles for combustion engines. For the 𝗙cie𝗹𝗹𝟎, an initial garage visit is needed at 8,000 miles or after the first year of driving, whichever comes first. Then the first scheduled service will be needed at 16,000 miles or at the 2-year point, then every 16,000 miles or 2 years thereafter. Whatever 2008 variant you choose, there are of course plenty of Peugeot outlets to select from, so you should never be too far from one. On that subject, at point of purchase, you can get a prepaid Peugeot servicing plan. For a relatively small monthly payment over 3 years, this will cover you for 3 services and an MOT, plus it'll give you 3 years of roadside assistance. Insurance ratings are reasonably comparable with other mainstream brand models in this segment. You're looking at Group 12E for the base 1.2 100 horsepower petrol unit, while the PureTech 130 engine is rated at Group 16E. For the 𝗙cie𝗹𝗹𝟎, insurance is rated at between Groups 25 and 27. Finally, you'll need to know about warranties. Now, in a class where Hyundai offers a standard 5-year warranty, Kia offers a 7-year package, and Toyota warranties you for up to 10 years, Peugeot, like most of its other rivals, persists with the usual 3-year 60,000 mile package, which can be extended up to 5 years and 100,000 miles at extra cost. A year's free breakdown cover is also provided, along with a 6-year anti-corrosion guarantee. On an 𝗙cie𝗹𝗹𝟎, the battery is covered by a separate 8-year 100,000 mile warranty up to 70% of its charge capacity. This improved version of Peugeot's second generation 2008 continues to make an overt style statement, but it's kept the sensible attributes that endeared its predecessor to plenty of buyers. As with most models of this kind, on paper, the advantages being offered over a standard Super Mini in space, styling and potential driving flexibility appear at first glance to be small. In practice, though, they add up to a car that feels a far more rounded, more complete family tool. Not as a primary runabout perhaps, but a perfect second family vehicle. The improvements that have come with this updated model aren't huge enough to make you want a 2008 if you didn't already covet one before. But if you did, then the even sharper looks, the provision of hybrid power and the option of a longer ranging EV version will all be welcome, though these enhancements have come at a price. Of course, there are things Peugeot could still improve. Not everyone likes the unusual iCockpit steering wheel and instrument setup, for instance. We think, though, that this car needs design innovations of this sort. Models of this kind ought to be fashionable, innovative, and just a little controversial. If that's what you want in this segment, then you probably need to try this car.